off track is what I was gonna say. Obviously, I had to stop home real quick and shower and shave and get a little refreshed and reboot. And I'm back on the road again, so I'm gonna take two here and finish what I was saying. So usually when I do these, when I talk online, when I campaign, everything that I've done, predominantly with the campaign and now the presidency, I'm usually speaking from the perspective of a professional, from my career, from someone who's an expert in marketing, online marketing, digital advertising, branding, color theory, design, layout. I've got 22 plus years. I'm a professional, I'm an expert in my field. And so usually when it comes to campaigning, I'm speaking from the position of someone who's a professional and who's an expert at those specific things. That's not what I want to do today. What I want to do today is more like what I do in my actual real life. Most of you guys that know me know that I am a recovering addict and alcoholic. By the grace of God, I've been sober for 18 years. I'm coming up on 19 here in a few months, and I'm pretty open about that fact, but I rarely talk about it, at least not lately, because it doesn't have a whole lot to do with the campaign and now this presidency. What it does have something to do with is my faith and my belief and how I came to believe what I believe today. So this video isn't meant to be exclusionary. This video isn't meant to, I don't get into that, this religion is right, that religion is right, this is that, that's actually what got me into a lot of the mess that I was in when I was out there homeless and doing drugs and complete demoralization to the point where I was at the depths of despair, and I couldn't stand to be in my own skin anymore. I was an atheist for a long time as a teenager, and coming to God, coming to some kind of a belief in power greater than myself came through the 12 steps for me. So I'm speaking from the position of an addict and an alcoholic that found God during the process of taking the 12 steps, and who had all of those things removed from me, and who received all the promises that were told to me. The man who saved my life, who gave me a life, Ed, he used to try to give me things, and my pride at the time was so much that I couldn't accept anything from anyone, because then I felt like either a loser or like I owed you something, and that's just how I lived, and I thought everybody was like that. And if I did something for you, I didn't realize it, but I found out through taking that process, through those 12 steps, I found out that, I'm really an addict and alcoholic in every way, shape, and form, in that, my human condition is extreme. It's a malady, a spiritual malady that affects the body and the mind. And for me, I had gone way past the point of choice. I lost the power of choice completely, and there was no human power that could relieve it from me. And so I was out of hope. I was hopeless. I was lost, and I just wouldn't die. And I can't describe that to anyone that's never been through it before. But there is a place you can be alive and in hell here now, suffering in your own skin, and that's where I was. And so, I had to change everything. In our book, we talk about, an entire psychic change had to happen, and the only requirement is honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. We had to be willing. So what saved me wasn't an instant belief or a blind faith in God. What saved me was that the only prerequisite, the only requirement was that I be open-minded enough to be willing to believe that there might be something greater than me that could possibly solve my problems. And at the time, that was all I could manage because I had so many preconceived ideas about God and faith and religion, from, being raised up with a radically religious mother who, put me through a lot of abuse and a lot of childhood trauma. And then I had my grandparents who were atheists. They were Catholic, but they were atheists, and they were in it for the morals and the tradition of it all. And so I saw like religious people as being like dumb and atheists as being like smart people, which is extremely offensive. I know, I understand, I get it. It really is, but that's the truth. That's the honest truth of how I felt at the time. So when people would speak to me about God, I would shush them. And I have a story, I call it my angel story, that I could try to share. The quickest version possible of it is that there was someone who just appeared out of nowhere in a car, not like from the sky or anything, but he was a guy that I thought was a narc. I thought he was an undercover cop, and he appeared at like 3 a.m. in the morning, and there's like literally nowhere. I've been walking for 3 miles, I had nowhere to go, and he just appeared. And he opened the door and he said, "Are you gonna get in?" And I thought immediately, like, this dude could be an axe murderer, he could be like, but then I had this little voice in my head that said, "What have you got to lose?" So I got in the car, and this guy, he tried to get me to understand what had happened in my life, because I was in so much denial about where I was and what had happened. And he helped, and he gave me really, really simple things. And he tried to talk about God, and the minute he said that word, I cut him off, and I said, "I don't believe in any of that crap." And he said something that no one else had ever said before. He had a comeback for that I wasn't ready for. I remember because, he was an Asian guy. He was really well dressed, really clean cut. I mean, these are all the reasons why I thought he was a cop. He was so clean cut. His car was clean and gutted. It was one of those, like, you remember when they did those Malibus, like the 2000s versions that were just like basically Fords? He had one of those, so he had all the markings of a cop, and super clean cut guy, not at all like the people that I was used to rolling with on the streets. And he told me, and he almost hissed like a snake when he said it. He said, "Some things are true whether you believe in them or not." And for the first time, I had no response. I was speechless. I had nothing to say to that. I didn't know how you respond to that. And that doesn't happen even still very often, that someone says something so powerful that it just kind of blew my mind. And I didn't get sober yet at that point. It took another 2 years of trudging through, the worst of the worst of the worst, before I found my way to that man that got me sober and helped guide me through action. And so Ed was very similar, and he's the reason, all these things, the synchronicity of events. Ed reminded me of that guy. And the reason I call it my angel story, just to clarify, is because I had gone back to the house after that I had originally met that guy at, and no one knew who I was talking about. No one remembered him. I ran, even then at that time, we had the internet, and I ran the description and the partial plates, and there was no car that existed with those partial plates of that description. in the area. It's like he didn't exist, like he was a ghost. So take that for what you will, but that was one of my first spiritual experiences. And Ed reminded me of that man, and Ed spoke like that man. He talked different than other people did. So one of the things that Ed used to always say is that there's two different ways that you come to God. One is by virtue, and one is by desperation. And I happen to be of the desperation variety. There are a lot of good people that are good people because they should be and because they want to be. I'm just not one of those people. For me, pain is the touchstone of all spiritual progress. When I get in enough pain, we have that saying, when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change, then I become willing to change. And that's where I was at. So Ed guided me, and he didn't ask that I instantly believe in any particular religion, any faith, any whatever. It was my concept of God, and coming to find what that would be through a process. And I had to take it back to as simple as possible. There's probably a God, and I'm definitely not it. And I got to see that through my whole life, I had been trying to play God by basically trying to arrange people and things and situations and my day to the way that I thought everything ought to be. And if it didn't go the way I thought everything ought to go, that was a bad day. Things were bad, right? So I was constantly either frustrated or disappointed with life because it never met my expectations of the way I thought things ought to go. And at the same time, I was judging myself and who I was by my intentions, and you guys were judging me by my actions. And so there was this constant disconnect between how people saw me and how I saw myself, right? And that would give me all these resentments and bitterness and hate and just all this crap inside of me because, I thought, how could they think that about me? And because I didn't want to be a bad person. I didn't want to screw people over. I didn't want to lie to people. I didn't want to, do any of that stuff. It just kind of happened that way without me intending for things to happen that way. And I thought, I would always say, if people only understood, and what I found is that it's not so much about people being able to understand me. My job is to understand them better. But that, again, was through a process. So when I speak about faith, when I speak about my beliefs in religion, when I talk about Christianity, I'm talking from the position of someone who had to start at square one, or, right from the bottom, and come to believe in a power greater than myself that, for me, is Christ, right? So the word Christian in Christianity literally means follower of Christ. And I went through this long process of coming to believe, my current understanding, my current, as far off as I'm sure it is, I'm still growing and I'm still learning. But Christ said that he was the way. And so there are a lot of people who have their 2 cents to give about religion and about God. There are a lot of Christian people who will say, well, you can't believe in God and not believe in the devil. You can't believe in this and not believe in that. You can't, and you know what I found is that you actually can. You can. None of that is actually true. So starting from scratch and coming to find God through a series of spiritual experiences, for me, led me to Christianity. And by Christianity, I mean Christ, who said he was the way. And what I see happening today, and how all of this relates to America and politics and, Christianity as a whole in the United States, what I see happening today is basically the same thing that has been happening for centuries on centuries, where religion gets used. They will cherry pick little things out of it to justify and rationalize behavior and bigotry and hate and wars. I mean, the Crusades, everything from that to slavery to the Jim Crow era to all of these things have been rationalized by so-called Christians. That's where it came from. They came from so-called Christians. And I know Republicans on the MAGA side and on the the real far right wackos, they like to use that term rhino to talk about a Republican in name only. And I think that the most appropriate acronym I can come up with is Crinos, because these are Christians in name only who cry a lot and they whine a lot, and and they don't resemble Christ or his teachings in any way, shape, or form. Donald Trump is the antithesis of everything that Christ taught. Everything, every single thing. The summary of all of Christ's teachings he gave to us in one single sermon, the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes. They sum up Christ's teaching. He said he was the way, not a collection of books that have been put together by human beings. Not one book that was authored and written, inspired by God. Not, one church, not one denomination, not one sect, not any particular, whoever. Christ said that he was the way. So if you call yourself Christian, and it's fine if you don't. I love atheists. I love agnostics. I love people of the Jewish faith, Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims. My best friend in the entire world is Muslim. It's not my place. And how the hell could I possibly know, which is right and which is wrong? And, that whole concept gets me right back into playing God and acting like I know how everything ought to be and how everything is. And I don't, because where humility comes in is in admitting I can't run the show. I make a terrible God every time that I try to assert my will, my self-will, to arrange the world and my day and my life and everything to suit me. It backfires bad. And that self-will for an addict or an alcoholic, regular people, it backfires and there's consequences and it hurts. But especially for people like myself who have an extreme variety of the human condition, it can take us out. It can take us right back to the drugs and the alcohol. And we can go from the fanciest house in the biggest mansion to, being right down there in the gutter, smoking a crack pipe or shooting heroin or, whatever it is that we were doing, just like that. And it can happen in a matter of one freaking day. I've seen it so many times. Guys, I know that there are very few people watching this video that have a long-term exposure to 12-step meetings and what any of that is all about. But most of you guys probably know someone who is an alcoholic or an addict. It's very difficult for regular people to understand the concept of someone who's lost the power of choice, because it sounds like a cop-out, right? It sounds like we're saying that they're not accountable, they're not responsible for our actions. And so 12-step meetings and 12-step groups from the very beginning, from the gate, have always, focused on accountability, that it's not my fault that I'm an addict and I'm an alcoholic, but I am responsible for it. And especially because I know that now, I'm even more responsible for it, and I'm even more accountable for it. Because if you know the truth and you choose to ignore it, that's called precept without practice. That's the actual phrase for it. These are like the Pharisees, right? They hold the keys to the kingdom, but they will not enter. Neither will they allow any of God's children to have them or enter. When it comes to today's so-called Christianity, the mainstream Christians, this is what I see. I don't see Jesus Christ. I don't see his teachings. I don't see it being a, from the bottom up, from the least of us, these my brethren. Who am I to judge? Let he who is not sin cast the first stone. That's not what I see in mainstream Christianity. Nowhere, absolutely nowhere, did Christ tell anyone to have contempt in their heart, to have hatred in their heart for anyone. Actually, he said if you've even thought it, it's as if you've done it. And so, just like we do in 12-step programs, I have to confess and I have to get real and I have to get honest about that fact. The last thing that I'll say is this. The same thing that happens to people with long-term sobriety also happens to people who have been, or elder statesmen in their particular church or, religion or creed, their system of beliefs. We get to a point where we feel like, we've done it. Now we are, I did that. And so we start to have this thing called spiritual pride. And the way it looks for addicts and alcoholics is like this. Because of the fact that I know that resentment and bitterness and having that righteous anger is something that I can't afford to have. Because of the fact that I know that if I hold that anger in me and that resentment, it's like drinking a cup of poison and expecting the other guy to fall over dead. Because of the fact that I know I shouldn't have those things, I will sometimes deny that I do have those things. And it's a spiritual pride that happens over long-term sobriety. This isn't exclusive to addicts and alcoholics. This is something that happens to, other people too, and regular people too. It's not exclusive to just us. So this is something that I feel can be useful for everybody, not just me and people like me, but for humanity as a whole and Christians as a whole. If you believe that you're a Christian, if you want to be Christian, then you have a choice to make. Either Jesus Christ meant what he said, and he really is the way, or you've got two options here, and both of them sound real bad. He didn't know what he was talking about, or he was wrong. What's your choice going to be? Is he the way, or was he incompetent? Is he the way, or was he wrong? It's very difficult to call yourself a Christian and believe that Christ was wrong. But if you think about it, every single time the poor ask for help and you turn them down, and Christ said not to. He said if someone asks you for your shirt, give him your jacket too. He said if a man sues you in court for $1,000, give him $2,000. If a man makes you walk a mile, walk 2 miles. On other faiths, other beliefs, things that you might not necessarily like and that you might have bigotry or prejudice in your heart for, Christ said, eat the food they provide you, heal the sick among them, be passerby, We're not here to make people obey us. That is not the job of a Christian. That's not the job of someone who's following Jesus Christ. If we're truly following Jesus Christ, our job is to be of service to God and his children. And Christ said, man has the authority to forgive sin. So no matter how far down the scale you've gone, you can see how your experience, your own personal experience, can benefit other people. This is one of the promises that we have in 12-step meetings. I'm an oversharer. It comes off a little off-putting to people sometimes. It's a habit that I've built up because of how dishonest and how deceptive and how secretive I used to be as an addict and as an alcoholic. And I learned, what saved me through those steps was getting brutally and fearlessly honest about myself and who I am, and being willing to put it all out there, even if it meant going to jail or prison or ridicule or everybody not liking me or whatever it was. I had to be willing to be honest and own who I am, or I could die. The choice for addicts and alcoholics, the consequences for us are death. They're extreme. But regular people, this applies to you guys too. It's just not as extreme. Regular people, if we hold on to all this hatred, all this bitterness, all this contempt, all this resentment, it hurts regular people too. It eats you up. It's like a soul sickness. And just the same as honesty is like a muscle that you got to work out. And the more you work it out, the stronger it becomes and the easier it becomes to use it. The same can be said for secrecy and deception and lies. They're like muscles too. And the more we work them out and the more we use them, the easier they become. It becomes very easy to tell a lie. It becomes very easy to swindle people and hustle people and be fake. And you'll see this play out in real life. I'll give you a quick example and then I'm going to wrap this thing up. So think about dating, right? A lot of people, when they date, they'll meet someone and they'll have this great relationship that they're super excited about, and it'll last for about 2 months. Why? Around 2 months, everything starts to fall apart. And it's usually because of one thing. It's usually because that's about how long it takes before the real you, through your actions, starts to come out. And this person that you've been, presenting, because we're taught in this society of ours to keep our mouths shut, to always show the best parts of us, and to never show the weak parts of us, to never show the dirt, right? We're taught that. This is part of our society. It's ingrained in us. That we're not just gonna throw out there all the bad things we've ever done. You definitely wouldn't be doing that on a first date. But the problem with it is we've got this idea that we need to pretend to be the best possible version of ourselves, and then it doesn't work out, because eventually who we really are comes to the surface through our actions. And the same can be said for the other side. The same can be said for them. We're both doing it, and then the relationship just crashes and burns. So what relationships look like for me after 18, 19 years of growth is there's a way to be honest about who you are without being, without just blurting things out there, which is what I did when I was very new in the program and I was really rusty at this whole honesty and humility thing. The way that I do it today is with my wife. I don't promise that I'm never gonna let her down. I don't ever want her to feel like I'm never going to let her down, because the truth is I'm going to let her down. It's a guarantee. It's going to happen. I'm going to let her down. I'm going to let her down a lot. I hope to be married to her for the rest of my life. And that's going to be a lot of mistakes. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes, and I'm going to let her down, and I'm going to disappoint her a lot of times. So I don't want to set her expectation to think that I'm not going to be, because I know that I will be making all these mistakes. And when we set people's expectations properly, we're giving them the respect of getting the opportunity to choose if that's who they want and that's what they want. And it's something that a lot of us, we don't do. We don't give people that respect. We don't give people the chance to decide for themselves if we're the kind of person that they want to be with. And the way that looks when it comes to faith and when it comes to religion, especially with online and the Twitter world and all these things, is everyone kind of expects everyone to be perfect all the time. Otherwise, canceled. And we're kind of creating that atmosphere to begin with. If we want to call ourselves Christians, if you want to call yourself Christian, or I think this applies to most faiths, the key is not to pretend like you're not human. The key is actually to embrace honesty fully, and to not be afraid and not be a coward about who you are. So when you guys hear me oversharing and telling personal stories and things like this, it's not out of self-pity. I'm really at peace with myself. All those promises, they came true for me. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We're going to know a new life, a new freedom, and a new happiness. We will cease fighting anything and anyone. By this time, sanity will have returned. If tempted, we'll recoil from it as from a hot flame. And further on in the 9th step promises, it says that fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. And you'll notice the word fear is there. It doesn't say that economic insecurity will leave us. It says fear of economic insecurity will leave us, right? So the fear is gone. I have faith now. It's been replaced. I don't stress. I don't worry. I believe, because it's happened so many times, that I'm going to be fine, right? So when I share personal things and I talk about tragedies, look guys, I've been through a lot of tragedies. I've been through a lot of traumatic things. I've been through, being shot at on purpose, being shot at on accident. I've been a victim of rape as an adult before I got sober. I grew up literally locked in a room with bars on the windows as a bedroom, and I would be beaten and forced to swear on Bibles, tell the truth, and get beaten anyway because she didn't believe me. And I was constantly told that I was evil. No joke. I mean, this is verbatim, the facts, the truth. I don't say any of this stuff to get anyone to feel sorry or self-pity. I don't have any self-pity for me about it. But the reason that I'm saying them is because I'm in the habit of saying these things as testimony. Part of the promises in these 12-step programs, and you hear me keep saying that because it's against our traditions to actually name the program at the level of press, radio, or film. So that's why I'm doing that. But in our promises, this is one of the things that we get if we meet the conditions and take those steps and we do the work. One of the things we get is that we can look the world in the eye again. We can look the world in the eye again, and we're at peace. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. And the very last thing that I will tell you guys is that serenity and peace are not being out in the wilderness practicing yoga poses away from people. That's just solitude. That's solitude. That's being away from everyone. That's not peace. What peace is total chaos going on around me and nothing going my way, and I'm fine. I'm fine with it. I'll leave you guys with a short story. So, one time, early in recovery, early 2000s, I was at BART, which is our local train system here in the Bay Area in California. I was at the BART station, and this little old blind man, he was making his way toward, it's like Braille, toward where the train door would arrive when the train got there. And so I kept my distance. I stayed back a little bit, and I just kind of watched patiently. And the train pulls up, doors open up, man slowly starts to make his way through. I haven't even moved yet at this point. And just as he gets about halfway through the door, this very large woman with a dog comes barreling through, and they get stuck and they get wedged in the doorway. And he is yelling out, "I'm so sorry, I can't see you, I'm blind." And this woman is very angrily screaming at him at the top of her lungs, yelling at him, "Why don't you watch where you're going, you asshole? Can't you see I'm blind?" True story. You can't make this up. This is a true story. This happened right in front of me. And it didn't stop there. They're wiggling, and, she's still continuing to scream. And, finally we all get onto the train, and he's on one end and she's on the other. And he's over there not saying a word, just, sitting there quietly. And she's on my left. I'm standing by the doorway holding a rail. And she's over there and she's just going, that jerk, I'm blind, and he's just not even looking out for me. He doesn't give a damn about other people, blah, blah, blah. Like, she still had not even heard the man say, "I'm sorry, I can't see you, I'm blind." She was so consumed with herself and so wrapped up in herself. She was just full of all this bitterness and resentment and hate, going on and on and on to anyone that would listen about what an asshole this guy was. So, peace. I told that story that night to my sponsor, and he asked me, which one would you rather be? Right? And every day, in every situation, we have a choice. We can choose to sue for peace, or we can fight to be right. What's our choice going to be? So I'll leave you with that story. I'm going to try to do a few more of these things and talk a little bit more about getting the Christ back in Christians, Crinos, and this sickness, I think, that's perverted Christianity in the mainstream. Thanks for letting me share, guys. I know this was a half an hour long. I tend to ramble and do that, but I appreciate everybody who stuck it out and followed to the end of this video. Thank you so much. I know there's only going to be a handful of you, but I am okay with that. If I reach one person, if anything that I said helped, then that's a blessing from me. So God bless you all. I hope that from the least of us up, everyone is okay. I will pray for your prosperity, your health, your well-being, and I could not be happier and full of more hope than I am right now with President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris about to be sworn in. I have faith. I'm keeping the faith, and I'm really excited about these plans and this from the bottom up economy, this agenda, and the crises that Joe and Kamala are diving into immediate action on. So thanks again, guys. Talk to you soon.